The silent cry. The signal in the darkness. Dr. Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the cascade of data flowing across her monitors at the Arecibo Deep Space Observatory. It was her third consecutive night shift, and the endless stream of cosmic background radiation had become a hypnotic blur. At 32, she had spent the last 8 years of her life listening to the universe, hoping to catch even the faintest whisper of intelligent life among the stars. The coffee had long since gone cold when every screen in the facility suddenly exploded with activity. Warning alarms shrieked as signal processors that had remained silent for decades burst into frantic operation. Sarah's heart raced as she watched patterns emerge from the chaos, patterns that were unmistakably artificial. "This is impossible," she whispered, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she tried to isolate the source. The signal was coming from the Arcturus sector, nearly 40 light-years away, and it was strong enough to suggest massive power sources behind its transmission. Within minutes, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the facility director, burst through the door still wearing his pajamas. "Sarah, what the hell is happening?" The emergency protocols activated and he stopped mid-sentence as he saw the displays. "Is that what I think it is?" Sarah nodded, her voice barely steady. "Marcus, we're receiving a structured transmission from deep space. The algorithms are already working on translation, but the mathematical sequences are clear. This is definitely intelligent communication." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of activity as linguists, mathematicians, and government officials descended upon the facility. The translation program, designed years ago for exactly this scenario but never expected to be used, slowly began to decode the alien language. The message of desperation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenolinguist, stood before the assembled crowd of scientists and officials as she prepared to read the translated message. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the printout. "The message reads as follows," she began, her voice carrying the weight of history. "This is the Calorian Republic broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Our civilization faces complete annihilation. The Zephyrian Empire has destroyed our outer colonies and now besieges our homeworld. We have fought for 15 cycles, but our defenses are failing. We send this message to any sentient species who might receive it. We do not ask for warriors or weapons, for we know the distances between stars are vast. We ask only that someone remember that we existed, that we tried to live in peace among the stars. We are the Calorians of the Arcturus system. We were here." The room fell into stunned silence. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to speak. "How old is this signal?" "Based on the transmission time from Arcturus," Sarah calculated quickly, "approximately 43 years. "Then they're already dead," someone said quietly. "Not necessarily," Dr. Vasquez interjected. "The message mentions 15 cycles. If their planetary rotation is similar to ours, and if they continued fighting, they might still be holding out. But barely." Earth's impossible decision. 3 days later, President Maria Santos sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by her most trusted advisors. The existence of the Calorian message had been classified at the highest levels, while the administration grappled with its implications. "Let me understand our situation," President Santos said, her voice measured. "We have confirmed contact with an alien civilization that is facing extinction. We have no way to communicate with them, no weapons capable of interstellar warfare, and no spacecraft that can reach them in any reasonable time frame. Is that correct?" Secretary of Defense James Mitchell nodded grimly. "Madam President, even our most advanced experimental craft would take over 200 years to reach the Arcturus system. By any measure, this is beyond our current capabilities." "What about the Prometheus project?" asked Dr. Rebecca Hayes, the President's science advisor. The room went quiet. The Prometheus project was humanity's most classified scientific endeavor, a theoretical faster-than-light drive system that existed only in computer simulations and small-scale laboratory tests. General Patricia Thompson, head of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. Dr. Hayes, the Prometheus drive has never been tested at full scale. The risks are enormous, and even if it works, we have no military capability that could possibly help against an interstellar empire. President Santos stood and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Washington morning. Throughout history, humanity has faced impossible odds. We've crossed oceans in wooden ships, walked on the moon with computers less powerful than pocket calculators, and cured diseases that killed millions. What makes us human isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our refusal to give up when others need help. She turned back to the room. I want to know if the Prometheus drive can be made operational. I want to know what assets we can realistically deploy. And I want to know if there's any way we can help these people. The Prometheus Awakening. 6 months later, in a converted aircraft hangar in Nevada, humanity's greatest scientific minds worked around the clock on what many considered an impossible project. The Prometheus drive, once theoretical, now hummed with power in the belly of the ESV Determination, Earth's first interstellar vessel. Dr. Amanda Foster, the lead engineer on the project, wiped sweat from her forehead as she reviewed the final diagnostics. At 45, she had spent her entire career dreaming of the stars, never imagining she would be responsible for humanity's first journey to them. The drive is stable, she reported to Captain David Park, the mission commander. We're reading nominal power levels across all systems, but David, I have to tell you again, this is still experimental technology. We don't know what will happen when we engage it at full power. Captain Park, a former Navy pilot with 20 years of experience in experimental aircraft, nodded calmly. Amanda, everything we're doing is experimental. The drive, the mission, the very idea that humans can make a difference in an interstellar war. But sometimes you have to leap into the unknown. The Determination wasn't a warship in any traditional sense. It carried no missiles, no energy weapons, no massive armor plating. Instead, its cargo holds were filled with medical supplies, food synthesizers, portable manufacturing equipment, and most importantly, 300 of Earth's most creative problem solvers. Dr. Kevin Murphy, a theoretical physicist from MIT, stood in the ship's primary laboratory, surrounded by equipment that would have been science fiction just 5 years earlier. We're not going to outgun them, he explained to his team. We're going to outthink them. Humans have always been at our best when we're improvising solutions to impossible problems. The volunteers. The crew of the Determination represented the best of humanity, but they weren't soldiers. Dr. Lisa Park, an emergency room surgeon from Chicago, had volunteered knowing she might never see Earth again. If there are people suffering out there, I can help, she had said simply during her interview. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez had left behind his wife and 2 children to join the mission. My kids asked me why I was going, he told his teammates. I told them that sometimes you have to do what's right, even when it's hard. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a biochemist specializing in alien extremophiles, represented the scientific community's dedication to the mission. We're going to learn more about life in the universe in the next few years than we have in all of human history, she said with excitement that masked her fear. As launch day approached, the crew said their goodbyes to families and friends, knowing that the experimental nature of their mission meant they might never return. But none of them hesitated. The Kilorian message had touched something deep in the human spirit, the same force that had driven explorers across unknown oceans and pioneers across untamed continents. Launch into the unknown. The launch was conducted in complete secrecy. Only a handful of world leaders knew that humanity's first interstellar vessel was leaving Earth's solar system. The Determination's crew strapped themselves in as the countdown reached its final moments. Prometheus drive charging, announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the navigation station. All systems showing green. Captain Park looked around the bridge at his crew, these brave men and women who had volunteered for a mission that might be suicide. Whatever happens out there, remember that we're not just representing Earth. We're representing the idea that when someone calls for help across the darkness of space, someone answers. Prometheus drive at full power, reported Dr. Foster from the engineering station. We're go for jump. Engage, Captain Park ordered. The stars outside the viewports suddenly stretched into lines of light as the determination leaped beyond the speed of light. Space itself seemed to fold around them as they hurtled toward the Arcturus system at speeds that defied every law of physics humanity had once understood. The arrival. Emergence at Arcturus. The ESV determination dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system with a brilliant flash of displaced energy. After 18 months of travel through the cosmic void, the crew found themselves staring at a scene of devastation that exceeded their worst fears. Captain David Park stood on the bridge, his expression grim as the sensor reports flooded in. The outer planets of the system were little more than debris fields, their surfaces scarred by massive bombardments. Automated defense stations drifted as dead hulks, their power cores long since extinguished. Captain, Lieutenant Sarah Kim called from the sensor station, her voice tight with controlled emotion. I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The Zephyrian fleet is enormous stir. Initial count suggests over 3,000 vessels in various formations. Dr. Amanda Foster, monitoring the ship's systems, added quietly. And they're all between us and the Calorian homeworld. Through the main view screen, they could see the distant glow of Caloria Prime, the planet that had sent its desperate message into the void decades ago. Around it, like a swarm of deadly insects, the Zephyrian fleet maintained its siege, occasionally launching bombardments that lit up the planet's defensive shields in brilliant flashes of energy. First contact with the survivors. Sir, I'm detecting a weak transmission, announced Communications Officer Lieutenant Robert Chen. It's on the same frequency as the original distress call, but the signal is much weaker. Put it through, Captain Park ordered. The bridge filled with static, and then a voice emerged, speaking in the musical tones of the Calorian language that Earth's computers had learned to translate. Unknown vessel, you have entered a war zone. The Zephyrian Empire will destroy any ship that approaches this system. Please retreat to safety while you still can. This is Caloria Prime Defense Command. We thank you for coming, but we cannot bear the responsibility for your destruction. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the xenolinguist who had joined the mission, stepped forward. Captain, they're trying to protect us. After 40 years of fighting alone, they're still concerned about strangers. Captain Park activated the communications system. Caloria Prime Defense Command, this is Captain David Park of the Earth Vessel Determination. We received your message. We're here to help. A long silence followed. Then a different voice came through the speakers, older and filled with wonder. Earth? You came. After all this time, someone actually came. The Calorian Resistance. Commander Zara Thalen had been fighting the Zephyrian Empire for most of her adult life. Her people's homeworld, once a paradise of crystal cities and floating gardens, now lay under constant bombardment. The planet's shield generators, maintained by the last of their technology, were failing after decades of continuous operation. When the impossible happened and a ship from a distant world called Earth appeared in their system, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The human ship was small compared to the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts, but as it approached the planet under cloak of the defensive shields, Zora could see that it was unlike anything she had encountered. Where Zephyrian vessels were all sharp angles and weapon arrays, this craft seemed designed for adaptation rather than destruction. Commander, her aide, Lieutenant Kess, reported, the human vessel is requesting permission to dock with our orbital station. Zara nodded. Grant them docking privileges. And Kess, prepare the council chamber. After 40 years of fighting alone, we're finally going to meet our allies. The human assessment. Dr. Kevin Murphy was among the first humans to set foot on the Calorian orbital station, and what he saw both amazed and horrified him. The technology was elegant, clearly the product of a highly advanced civilization, but it showed the wear of decades of desperate warfare. Kilorian technicians worked frantically to maintain systems that should have been replaced years ago. Energy conduits had been rerouted so many times that some corridors looked like electronic spider webs. The air itself carried the metallic taste of recycled atmosphere pushed beyond its limits. "They've been fighting with salvaged equipment for decades," he whispered to Dr. Jennifer Walsh as they were escorted through the station. "It's incredible they've survived this long." The Kilorians themselves were equally fascinating. Tall and graceful, with iridescent skin that shifted color with their emotions, they moved with an efficiency born of long practice in crisis management. But Murphy could see the exhaustion in their large, expressive eyes, the weight of a war that had consumed their entire civilization. Commander Zarathalan met the human delegation in what had once been an elegant council chamber. Now it served as a combination command center and refugee shelter, with families of non-combatants sleeping in corners while holographic displays showed the constant movement of enemy fleets. "Captain Park," Zara said, her voice carrying both gratitude and desperation, "I must ask you directly. What can 300 humans do against the entire Zephyrian Empire? Our sensors show your ship carries no weapons capable of threatening their dreadnoughts." Captain Park smiled, and Murphy recognized the expression he had seen on the faces of human innovators throughout history. "Commander Thalen, you're absolutely right. We can't match their firepower. But humans have learned that the biggest problems rarely have obvious solutions." The Zephyrian Doctrine. High Admiral Vex Corvain commanded the Zephyrian siege fleet from his flagship, the Annihilator, a massive dreadnought that bristled with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. For 40 standard years, he had maintained the blockade of Caloria Prime, following the Empire's doctrine of slow extinction. The Zephyrians didn't simply conquer worlds, they erased them. Their method was methodical and terrifying in its efficiency. First, they would destroy all space-based defenses and orbital infrastructure. Then they would maintain a siege, gradually wearing down planetary shields while preventing any supplies from reaching the surface. Finally, when the population was weakened and desperate, they would land ground forces to eliminate any survivors. Caloria Prime had lasted longer than most worlds, but Corvain knew it was only a matter of time. The planet's shield generators were operating at less than 30% efficiency, and his scouts reported that the population was struggling with food shortages and medical supply failures. When his sensors detected the arrival of the small alien vessel, Corvain was more curious than concerned. "Navigator, identify the newcomer." "Sir, the vessel appears to be from an unknown species. It's small, approximately 1/10 the mass of our light cruisers. Weapons signatures are minimal." Corvain laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Another species come to watch the Calorians die. Let them observe. Perhaps they'll learn what happens to those who oppose the Empire." He had no way of knowing that he was about to encounter something the Zephyrian Empire had never faced before. Humans with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The human plan. In the makeshift conference room aboard the Determination, Captain Park gathered his department heads and the Kilorian leadership for a planning session that would determine the fate of two civilizations. "The situation is clear," he began, gesturing to the holographic display showing the system. "The Zephyrians have overwhelming numerical superiority. They have better weapons, stronger shields, and 40 years of experience fighting the Calorians. By every conventional measure, this is hopeless." Commander Thalen's skin shifted to a deep blue, indicating despair in Calorian color language. "Then why did you come so far just to confirm our fate?" Dr. Murphy leaned forward. "Because humans specialize in unconventional measures. Commander, tell me about the Zephyrian Empire. How do they think? What are their strengths and weaknesses?" "They are methodical," Zara replied. "They follow precise doctrines developed over centuries of conquest. They rely on overwhelming force and have never encountered significant resistance. Their tactics never change because they have never needed to change." "Perfect," said Dr. Foster with a grin. "They're predictable." Dr. Lisa Park, The mission's chief medical officer studied the tactical displays. What about their biology? Do we know anything about Zephyrian physiology? Lieutenant Kess, Commander Thalen's aide, activated a new display. Our intelligence suggests they are silicon-based life forms, extremely resistant to radiation and capable of surviving in harsh environments. They are much stronger than Calorians physically, but they rely heavily on their technology. Silicon-based, mused Dr. Walsh. That means they'll have completely different vulnerabilities than carbon-based life. Different chemical reactions, different electromagnetic sensitivities. Captain Park felt the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. Commander Thalen, we need to know everything about Zephyrian technology. Their communication systems, their power sources, their computer networks, and we need to know about their command structure. Why? Zara asked. Because, Captain Park said, his eyes gleaming with the same determination that had driven humanity to the stars. We're going to teach the Zephyrian Empire something they've never learned before. We're going to show them what happens when humans fight for something they believe in. Over the next several hours, the combined human and Calorian teams worked to develop a plan that would have been dismissed as impossible by any conventional military strategist. It relied not on superior firepower or better defenses, but on the one thing humans had always done better than anyone else: adaptation. The Zephyrians had spent 40 years learning how to defeat Calorian resistance, but they had never encountered humans, and they were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you've never seen before. As the planning session continued into the night cycle, Captain Park looked around the room at the faces of his crew and their new Calorian allies. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried in the history of interstellar warfare. They were going to prove that sometimes the force that matters most isn't the one that destroys, but the one that refuses to give up. The battle for Caloria Prime was about to begin, and the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn why humanity had never met a challenge it couldn't overcome.